Sound is one of the most familiar things in your life, and at the same time one of the most misunderstood. You hear sound constantly: voices, music, footsteps, engines, wind. Yet sound is not an object. It is not a substance. And it is not something that travels through space the way a physical object does. Sound is a process, a transfer of energy through matter. Here is the first crucial fact that changes everything. Sound cannot exist in a vacuum. In empty space, explosions are silent. You may see them, but you will never hear them. This single fact already tells us what sound really is. Sound is not like light. It does not move on its own. It requires a medium. If you like similar educational content, please like, subscribe, and share the video with your friends. So what is sound, physically? Sound is mechanical vibration. When something produces sound, it does not send particles flying toward your ear. Instead, it causes nearby particles to oscillate back and forth around their resting positions. These tiny motions are passed from particle to particle, forming a wave. Energy moves forward. Matter does not. A simple analogy makes this clear. Throw a stone into a calm lake. The water itself does not travel across the lake. Only the wave does. Sound works the same way in air, water, or solid materials. Air molecules do not fly from the speaker to your ear. They only vibrate locally, transferring pressure changes onward. Every sound begins with a source of vibration. This can be vocal cords, a guitar string, a speaker membrane, a collision between objects, or even an explosion. That vibration disturbs nearby particles, creating alternating regions of compression and rarefaction. These pressure changes propagate outward as a sound wave. This wave is not sideways motion. Sound waves are longitudinal. The particles move back and forth in the same direction the wave travels. This is fundamentally different from water waves or light waves, and it is the reason sound behaves the way it does. Another key insight: the speed of sound is not the speed of particles. Individual air molecules move only microscopic distances, yet the sound wave itself travels much faster. That is why you hear thunder moments after seeing lightning, even though the air has barely moved at all. Sound also behaves very differently depending on the medium. It travels slower in air, faster in water, and even faster in solids. This is not because solids are denser, but because they are more elastic. They transmit mechanical disturbances more efficiently. Sound is about how quickly a material responds to deformation. And here is something even more important. Sound is not the same as hearing. Sound exists as a physical pressure wave whether or not anyone is listening. Hearing is what happens later, inside the brain. Without a listener, sound is just vibration. Meaning appears only after interpretation. In other words, sound is objective physics, but what you hear is subjective perception. Before we can understand music, speech, noise, or silence, we must first understand sound as motion, energy, and structure. Only then can we explain why some sounds feel pleasant, others irritating, and some carry information while others do not. Once we understand that sound is mechanical vibration, the next step is learning how to describe it precisely. What your brain experiences as pitch, loudness, and tone color are not subjective mysteries. They are direct interpretations of measurable physical properties of sound waves. Let us start with frequency. Frequency describes how many complete oscillations occur each second. It is measured in hertz. A low frequency means slow vibration. A high frequency means rapid vibration. Frequency is what your brain interprets as pitch. Deep sounds come from slow oscillations. High-pitched sounds come from fast ones. A large engine produces a low sound because massive components vibrate slowly. A mosquito produces a high sound because its wings vibrate extremely fast. The size of the object does not matter by itself, only the speed of vibration does. Human hearing is limited to a specific frequency range. Sounds below this range are not silent. They are simply inaudible. The same is true for very high frequencies. Sound can exist even when you cannot hear it, just like light can exist outside the visible spectrum. The next key property is amplitude. Amplitude describes how strong the pressure variations in the sound wave are. Larger amplitude means greater pressure differences, and therefore greater energy. This is what your brain interprets as loudness. Loudness does not increase linearly with amplitude. The human ear responds logarithmically. Doubling the physical energy does not make a sound feel twice as loud. This is why quiet sounds change dramatically with small energy increases, while loud sounds seem to change very little. Now we reach the most misunderstood characteristic of sound, timbre, sometimes called tone color. Two instruments can play the same pitch at the same loudness and still sound completely different. This is because real sounds are not made of a single frequency. They are complex combinations of many frequencies occurring simultaneously. Every vibrating system produces a fundamental frequency along with multiple higher frequency components called harmonics. The relative strength and timing of these harmonics define the character of the sound. This is why a piano does not sound like a violin, even when they play the same note. Time also plays a critical role. How quickly a sound begins, how long it sustains, and how it fades away strongly affect perception. A sudden impulse sounds sharp and percussive. A gradual onset sounds smooth and continuous, even if all other properties are identical. Here is the crucial insight. There is no pitch or loudness in the air itself. The air contains only pressure variations. Pitch and loudness exist only after the brain interprets these variations. Sound waves are physical. Sound perception is neurological. Your ears do not hear sound. They measure it. Your brain decides what it means. Once sound is created, it does not move through space in a simple, clean path. Sound spreads, bends, reflects, interferes, and loses energy, all depending on the environment it moves through. This is why the same sound can feel completely different in a small room, a cathedral, or an open field. Sound waves propagate outward in all directions from their source. As they travel, their energy spreads over a larger area, which is why sound becomes quieter with distance. This is not because sound disappears, but because the same amount of energy is distributed more widely. When sound encounters an obstacle, it does not simply stop. Part of the wave is reflected, part is absorbed, and part may pass through the material. Hard, smooth surfaces reflect sound efficiently. Soft or porous materials absorb it by converting mechanical vibration into heat. This is why empty rooms sound harsh and echo-filled, while furnished rooms feel acoustically softer. Curtains, carpets, and furniture do not block sound completely, but they remove energy from reflections, making sound clearer and less chaotic. Reflection leads to one of the most familiar acoustic phenomena, echo. When a reflected sound returns after a noticeable delay, your brain perceives it as a separate event. When reflections return very quickly, they blend with the original sound and create reverberation instead. The difference between echo and reverb is not physical, it is perceptual. Another critical phenomenon is interference. When multiple sound waves meet, they combine. Sometimes they reinforce each other. Sometimes they cancel out. This creates regions of strong sound and regions of near silence. In many rooms, bass frequencies may feel overwhelming in one spot and almost absent a short distance away. This is not imagination, it is wave physics. Closely related is resonance. Every object in space has natural frequencies at which it vibrates most easily. When sound matches those frequencies, energy builds up instead of dissipating. Resonance can amplify sound dramatically. Without adding extra energy, only timing matters. This is why certain notes can make windows rattle, why some rooms boom, and why poorly designed structures can vibrate dangerously when exposed to specific frequencies. Sound is not just heard. It physically interacts with matter. Sound waves also diffract, meaning they bend around obstacles rather than stopping abruptly. This is why you can hear someone speaking even when they are not in direct line of sight. Lower frequencies diffract more easily than higher ones, which is why bass sounds travel farther and around corners more effectively. Despite all this complexity, your brain performs constant correction. It filters reflections, estimates distance, identifies direction, and reconstructs meaning from incomplete information. What you experience as stable, clear sound is actually the result of continuous real-time processing. Sound is shaped as much by space as by its source. To understand hearing fully, we must now follow sound to its final destination, the human ear and brain. The moment sound reaches your ear, physics ends and biology begins. Sound as a wave stops at the ear. Sound as experience starts in the brain. What you hear is not a direct copy of reality, but the result of complex signal processing performed by your nervous system. Everything starts with the outer ear. Its shape is not decorative. The folds and curves subtly modify incoming sound depending on direction. This helps your brain determine where a sound is coming from. Tiny differences in timing and intensity between your two ears allow you to localize sound in three-dimensional space with remarkable accuracy. Sound then travels through the ear canal and reaches the eardrum, a thin membrane that vibrates in response to pressure changes in the air. At this point, sound changes form for the first time. Air pressure becomes mechanical motion. Behind the eardrum is a chain of three tiny bones. Their purpose is amplification. Sound in air is relatively weak, but the inner ear is filled with fluid, which resists motion. Without amplification, most sound energy would be reflected and lost. These bones concentrate the motion and efficiently transfer it into the inner ear. The inner ear contains a spiral-shaped structure filled with fluid and lined with thousands of microscopic sensors. This structure acts as a frequency analyzer. Different sound frequencies cause different regions to vibrate. High frequencies activate one area, low frequencies another. Sound is physically separated into components before the brain ever sees it. Here, vibration becomes electricity. Specialized sensory cells bend in response to fluid motion and generate electrical signals. At this moment, sound no longer exists as a wave. It exists as patterns of neural activity. From here on, the ear is no longer involved. The brain takes over. The brain combines signals from both ears, reconstructs pitch, loudness, and timbre, estimates distance and direction, and filters irrelevant noise. This happens continuously and automatically. Hearing is not passive. Your brain actively decides what you hear. This is why you can focus on one voice in a noisy room. The sound waves reach your ears unchanged, but your brain selects which signals matter. This process is so advanced that it often feels effortless, even though it is one of the most complex sensory tasks the brain performs. And this leads to a final, crucial realization. Sound does not exist as sound outside your brain. Outside, there are only pressure variations. Meaning, music, speech, annoyance, comfort. These are interpretations. Two people can hear the same sound wave and experience it completely differently. Sound is physics. Hearing is neuroscience. Experience is interpretation. And that is the complete story. Sound begins as invisible motion in matter. It travels as structured energy, and it ends as meaning inside your mind. That is how sound works.